Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Best Practices for Editing Documents in the AIA Contract Documents online service webinar, brought to you by AIA Contract Documents. We're going to go over a few administrative items before we get started. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded to the AIA Contract Documents Learn page. At the end of the presentation, there is the Learn page web link, but for your reference, it is www.aiacontracts.org/learn. You can find the PowerPoint for today's presentation in your GoToWebinar on the right-hand side. I have uploaded it there for you, so if you click on it, you can actually have that for reference. Early next week, we will send you an email with the recording along with the PowerPoint, so you will have next week with that information, but in the meantime, you do have the PowerPoint in your GoToWebinar window on the right-hand side. All attendees are currently muted. Please enter any questions that you have in your GoToWebinar window. I did receive a large number of questions prior to the webinar. We are going to do our best to answer as many questions as we possibly can today. But thank you for your patience. We do have a large number of attendees registered and attending today's webinar, so we're going to do our best to get through as much as possible. Just also want to clarify that this webinar is not content related at all. This is tips for using the AIA Contract Documents online service, specifically how you edit documents. So I want to make sure that any of you that were expecting any best practices in terms of content and legal language understand that this is just a product training and a Q&A. Because it's going to be mainly answering questions, this is not eligible for a learning unit. So we'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Hasti Hijazi. I am Director of Global Innovation Education at the AIA, and today I'll be conducting today's webinar with my colleagues Will Harris and Ariel Enriquez. Will is Senior Director of AIA Contract Documents Technical Support, and Ariel is the Director of our Technical Support team. So they'll be on hand to answer questions throughout the webinar as we receive them and go through a few PowerPoint slides first. I've compiled some tips for you, but before we start with the tips, I want to talk a little bit about how the online service is organized. So for many of you who've been working in the online service in ACD5 for some time, you've seen that it's organized by tabs. So you have the Home, Projects, Template Library, and Contacts. Home is where recent activity will be. Projects is really where you should begin editing all of your documents. When you begin editing documents from a project that you've created on the Project tab, all of the project data and project team information will automatically populate in your document. If you open documents from the Template Library, that information won't automatically populate. It'll be empty and you'll have to manually enter that in. So I always think that that's a very important distinction, especially for new users that might not be aware. If you create your projects first and add project team members and then begin editing documents within that project, that information will automatically populate. Template Library is great for finding the right document, and there's a few tools like Help Me Select the Right Document, side-by-side comparison, previews, instructions, synopsis, and so forth. There's also a few other things you can do in the Template Library tab. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Contacts is where you manually enter your contacts in one time. You're going to use these contacts to set project team members to your project when you create it. At that time, when you then create a document within that project, the project team information will automatically populate in your documents. So you do manually have to enter your contacts in first, one time here in this tab, but you'll never have to enter them in any of your documents that you create from the Project tab. Another thing that I wanted to point out before we get started is on the upper right-hand side of your screen when you log into ACD5. there's a My Settings link over your name. All single users will have the My Settings link. This is where you can set preferences, you can check which notices or notifications you receive, you can indicate whether or not you want to be asked about digital signature placeholders in your final contracts, or if you just want a written signature. So get familiar with your My Settings. You can also check your storage quota here. Every single user of the online service has a 2 gig storage quota. This roughly translates to 4,000 documents. You can purchase additional storage or just see how much of the quota you've used in My Settings. For those of you who are part of a multi-user license, this is when a company purchases 2 or more unlimited subscriptions for their staff members. That company can then designate an administrator on behalf of the company to share information, globally publish the work of one user so all the users in the company can use it, and set permissions for who can, edit documents. That administrator, once they're designated for the company, will see a company settings link over their name. That's where they can manage the company account. Again, this is only for those of you who are part of a multi-user license. Your company has purchased for 2 or more staff to have their own accounts that are unlimited annual subscriptions. You can designate a company settings or an administrator to oversee the company settings. You can contact technical support if you'd like more information on that. Their contact information is at the end of the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll refer to how you can get in touch with them. Lastly, in the upper right-hand side, there's the Help module. That's this white question mark icon. You can click on that to see beginner's guides, video tutorials, and other information. One more slide before we get started with the tips and tricks. If any of you have sat through the basics webinar training, you've seen this slide. This is a really important slide, so I'd like to, again, always start my presentations with this. This goes through the life cycle of a document in the online service. In the online service, you start with a standard AIA template, and you have 2 ways to edit that template, either online editor, which is built into the product, or offline using Microsoft Word. We're going to talk about both today. We'll start with talking about editing offline in Microsoft, and then we'll have a few tips at the end for using the online editor. Regardless of which method you use, the final is the same. It's a locked Adobe PDF final, and it's variance checked. The variance checker runs automatically when you generate a final. Basically, it is a cumulative summary of all of the edits that was made to the standard template. So any added text that you added is shown as underlined, any deleted text is shown as stricken through. You have 2 options for the final, either a clean or comparative. The clean has an additions, deletions report at the end of the final that indicates the page number and what edit was made. And the comparative has all the edits in line with the paragraph where you made them. This is built into our products on purpose. We don't allow you to turn that off because we want to make sure everyone who signs the final contract knows exactly where the edits to the standard template were made. So you have 2 options for editing. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with tip number 1. Editing offline, especially for agreements in the online service, is best. There are some forms that are best to use the online editor. I think specifically payment applications and change orders where you can import data from the previous month's entry. I do actually have a webinar on March 8th on completing payment applications and change orders in the online editor in ACD5. So if you'd like more information about that free webinar, you can visit our Learn page to register. That's coming up next week, March 8th. But again, tip number 1 is when you're editing agreements, it's really best to use Microsoft Word, especially when you're completing complex edits. Complex edits include cutting and pasting from various documents, inserting tables, inserting large images, and inserting bullets. When you have lots of complex edits like this, it's best to use offline editing so you don't run into any problems with HTML code or any other online editing features. Another tip here is it's best to begin all of your work, if you're working offline in Microsoft Word, which again is the recommended way for ACD5, it's best to begin working offline and end working offline. It's best not to start in the online editor and then transfer it to Microsoft Word or download the draft. You really don't want the online editor and offline talking. It's really best just to begin editing offline from the get-go and just continue on doing all of your edits offline. One thing that's important to note here as well, for those of you who are past desktop software users, there is no add-ins when you're working in Microsoft in ACD5. Add-ins is a tab that was built into the desktop software, so when you were editing in Microsoft Word previously, you could use the add-ins toolbar. With ACD5, there is no add-ins. You're just going to use Microsoft Word track changes to track your changes and accept or reject edits. So again, editing agreements offline is best. Typically, when you're in a project and you click Create Document, this pop-up will come up and you can choose from your standard, custom, and favorites. I'll talk more about custom templates shortly. Typically, you can either click on the name of the document or click Edit Offline. If you click Edit Offline, it'll open in Microsoft Word. So again, that's really the best way. Once you click Create Document, you can click Edit Offline to open any of our agreements in Microsoft Word. Do all of your edits offline. That'll provide you the best user experience. Keep in mind that you can change your default settings now for editing agreements in My Settings. My Settings is that link that I showed you that'll be on top of your name in the upper right-hand side when you log into ACD5. You see here it says Default Editor for New Draft Agreements, and you can select Always Online or Always Offline. We recommend for agreements, go ahead and change that to Always Offline. That way, if you click on the name of a document, it will open in Microsoft Word automatically. So you don't even have to click Edit Offline. If you set your default settings here in My Settings over your name on the right-hand side, you'll see this screen. This middle tab is called the Document tab. Here you can set your preferences and check which notices you'd like to see. In the middle of the screen, you'll see Default Editor for New Draft Agreements, Always Online or Always Offline. You can go ahead and indicate Always Offline. Then all of your document agreements will open in Microsoft Word. So I've already mentioned this, but it's worth its own tip. Always begin editing from the Projects tab, because this way, all of your project details and project team information will automatically populate in any documents you create from the project. So if you go to the projects team, you'll click Create New Project. You're going to create and enter all of your project data. You're going to add your project team from your Contacts tab, and then you're going to click Create Document within that project once you select it on the left-hand side. Once you click Create Document, again, you'll be able to choose from your standard, custom, or favorites tabs, and you'll be able to open any document. And all of that project data and contact information for your project team will automatically populate. You won't have to manually enter that information in. Tip 4, and again, this is regarding working offline in Microsoft Word. The last step is to import the document within your project and then finalize it. The import button is to the right of the Create Document button, and once it's been successfully imported, you'll see what type it is with the Microsoft Word icon. You can click Finalize to generate that final. After you've imported, don't click on the document to open it. If you have an edit, what you can do is delete the version you've imported. For more actions, just click Delete and delete it from the cloud, and just go back to the original location where the document is saved on your computer, make your edits, and then re-import the file. So best not to reopen it once you've imported it into ACD5. Again, you don't ever want the online editor to try to, read any Microsoft Word documents. It's best to just work offline from the beginning. As a last step, you're going to import it and just click Finalize. And again, if you realize there's a typo, just go back to the original location on your computer, fix the typo, re-import the file, and then you can finalize that document. So we do get a lot of questions at technical support about where the document is saved. So offline documents are saved automatically in your downloads folder on your desktop. That's the default browser setting. Of course, it's a Microsoft Word document. You can save it wherever you'd like on your computer, any common drive or desktop, anywhere you'd like. However, if you've just been clicking save and you don't remember, you didn't save it to another location, check your downloads folder. That's where it's saved by default. Tip number 6, you can create a custom template to use later. So any agreement that you create in Microsoft Word can be uploaded as a custom template in the Template Library tab. So when you click the third tab, Template Library, I mentioned AIA Templates is a great place where you can find the right document, do a side-by-side comparison, preview documents, but you can also go to that second tab, Custom Templates, and this is where you can save your custom templates. You can click Import Template to upload a Microsoft Word custom template here. Keep the project data empty, so within those chevrons, you can keep the data empty when you're saving a custom template, but have your saved provisions, whether those are the provisions that you want to use every time you're using this document, whether that's insurance or anything company specific that you want saved, and you'll save it into that folder. Then when you click Create Documents from the Projects tab, you'll see again Standard, Custom, and Favorites. You can click the Customs tab and open the Microsoft Word custom template. And again, the project data will automatically populate for the new project that you've created. Tip number 7, don't delete italicized instructions. You can see here in many articles, there's italicized instructions. When you delete them, I believe it shows as paragraphs deleted. It can cause confusion, so it's best not to delete those italicized instructions. So now what we're going to do, if you just give us one moment, we're going to begin answering questions. As I mentioned, I did receive a large number of questions prior to the webinar, so we're sifting through and we're going to answer questions on editing offline now. So one moment. Okay, so we'll start with this question. Why doesn't ACD5 recognize custom tab stops when finalizing documents? The older version recognized them. So I'm going to go ahead and answer this question as I have the answer ready. The online environment's not conducive to such complex functions. It's best to work in Microsoft Word offline when you're using tabs. So if you're already working offline and this issue persists, it's possible that the offline document that was created came from an online document. Again, a lot of times you can start in the online editor and download the draft into Microsoft. Again, it's not something that we recommend. It's best to just begin in Microsoft Word and end in Microsoft Word. So you would just start from the very beginning, clicking Edit Offline or Set Offline as your default setting, and that will allow you not to have this issue. The online editor is not best for these types of edits in terms of tabs. It can cause some issues in your final in terms of formatting. We also got this question, why was the city, state, zip code duplicated when I created a new document after adding the project team members? So it should not duplicate. There could be a few reasons for this. Either you had information in the data dialog which it was feeding into, as well as placing it in the document manually, or you created the document based on a custom template, and in the custom template, you had reference to contacts. Again, when you're importing a file in the custom templates folder, have all of your edits in there, but keep the project data and project team information empty So then when you open that custom template from a new project, it's going to automatically populate based on the new project's data. If you've already added information, it might be duplicated. So I'm going to now ask Will and Ariel to answer a few questions for us. So we got one that was emailed. In ACD5, under the Project tab, can the Delete Project button be moved to a more unreachable area on the page? Because currently the Delete Project button is to the right of Create, or
to the right.
And any comments that we do get, we'll definitely provide to our product team. It's definitely something that can always be for consideration.
Yeah, this feature here could be enhanced. We could, fix the UI to be able to see this more visibly and somewhere that you could easily click on.
Okay, great. So this will definitely be a comment that we can go turn to our product team on. So now I'd like Will and Ariel to talk about the timeout of the site. Typically right now, the default is that you will be logged out for inactivity after 20 minutes. Are there any comments on that?
The main reason for the 20-minute timeout is for PCI compliance. For security reasons, it is necessary to prevent hacking of the site, so to speak, that the timeout be lessened. At this point in time, the best way, in essence, if one is working on an agreement to prevent that timeout feature, or just to get around this altogether, the best way to work on a document would still be to work on a document in the offline editing mode anyway. That would prevent any kind of timeout. Only time that one would almost need to work in the online environment would be on forms, but the agreements would be advisable to work in the offline mode anyway.
Okay, so now I'm going to read some more questions from the chat. So, how do you add a document to the Favorites tab? I can actually answer this one. When you have worked on a document and you've either gone to, let's say, your AIA standard templates, if you click on More Actions to the right of the document, you can click Add to Favorites. In fact, I do have my ACD5 subscription up. I can actually show you in real time. So if you go to Template Library and you see a document you want to add to your favorites, just click More Actions to the right of the document and Add to Favorites. You can enter a name for it, click OK, then it's going to be saved here on that fourth tab in Template Library. Again, when you're in Projects tab and you've created a project, you can then select the project, and then when you click Create Document, you'll be able to choose from your standard, custom, or favorites. That's where you can find whatever documents have been saved to your favorites file. Okay, here's one question. My edit project data does not work. Is this because I created online and edited offline?
Okay, so when one edits their project data, that's considering working on the data dialog. Essentially, at this point, you would. It's not. This information is not synchronous. So when you edit your project data and you create a document, that information will then appear in that document. If you download, so essentially you should edit your project data, create a document, and download that document to work on it offline, again, for the output that you're looking for. So if you have edited the project data and you create a document after you've edited the project data, and that part is not working as designed, then that's something that we need to know about. But that's how that would. It is not backwards sync. It doesn't sync back. The document's already created previous.
Okay, here's another question. We've had issues with offline editing and bringing back into the program. Changes may be lost after importing back in. Any comments, Will and Ariel?
For that one, if you edit it offline and then when you import it back, it's still not, the expectation on the final, the formatting is still not correct. More often, that document was at least either created or open in the online editor that caused that issue. So even though you continue to work offline and uploaded it, it'll still have the formatting problem. To correct that in the future when creating a document, make sure to choose to edit offline with that. And if you have any issues really with document issues, I'd recommend to contact our technical support and we'll be glad to assist you and walk you through.
Here's a question I can answer. I'm a solo operation at present. I'll need maybe 3 AIA contracts in a year at most. The last one I purchased for electronic use was $85. What is the most cost-effective route for a small operation? So that touches on the fact, for those of you who may not know, so our 2 options for purchasing documents in ACD5 online service is either purchasing a custom single document or purchasing an unlimited annual subscription. For this question, for this attendee, it does sound like that is the best option, is if you purchase documents as you need them. Prices do range anywhere from $24.99 to $79.99 per document, depending on if it's an agreement or a form, which one you choose. That's going to be the most economical. That's the best for those of you who don't need unlimited access and unlimited finals for the year. The other option is an unlimited annual subscription, either for a single user, or companies can purchase multiple accounts for their staff. Anywhere from 2 to 50, I believe, is advertised on our website and priced out. But if you'd like, even more than that, you can contact technical support for pricing. So here's a question. When I create a document, the edit project data does not work. It just hangs. Any comments?
Okay. If this is the behavior, if you would, we're going to try and do a couple of questions here in rapid succession. So hang in there with us, guys. For this, if this is the behavior, then we need to address this directly. This isn't one that typically, this isn't something that should happen. This is a function that should work properly for you. But we need to know and understand this behavior. So in this case, you would need to reach out to us directly in order to address this one.
Here's an important question, and there's actually a tip later on in the presentation. How do you add chevrons to restore fill points? It's very important not to delete the chevrons, especially in the online editor. Once you delete them, it causes issues and you can't really bring them back. You have to call technical support and they have to help you with the document in and of itself. Are there any other comments on chevrons that you would like to add to that? So basically, it's really hard to bring them back once you delete them. The important tip here is don't delete the chevrons. Work within the chevrons to make edits to the data, but don't delete the chevron itself. Here's a question. Can you send a copy of this presentation slides? The presentation is actually included in your GoToWebinar on the right-hand side, so you can click on it and save it to your computer. Next week, we're going to email you the PowerPoint slides along with the recording of today's webinar, but it will be available next week. We will be emailing all the registered attendees with the recording and the PowerPoint. But if you need it more immediate, just go to your GoToWebinar. I think under handouts, you should be able to see it. It's called Best Practices for Editing Documents. It's a PDF, and that's today's presentation. I did get just a question here following up on chevron. So if you're working offline and you accidentally delete a chevron and you click undo in Word, that should be fine. That's not going to cause any problems. That'll make the chevron reappear. It's really in the online editor that deleting chevrons gets kind of tricky. But yes, if you're working in Microsoft, you delete a chevron, click undo, it'll reappear. That shouldn't cause you any problems at all. Here's a question on color. So can you change the highlighting color when you edit offline? Will and Ariel.
Okay, this one is based on your Word setting. That's usually track changes where Word automatically assigns a color to different authors. So it's not something that I'd recommend that you change manually just because it's Word that's differentiating it. And that track changes color when you upload and finalize it. It's not going to go into your final document.
I'm getting a lot of questions asking for an example of a chevron. I actually have that in the PowerPoint a few slides later, so just stay tuned and I'm going to show you exactly what the chevrons look like.
A chevron in general is a left or right pointing arrow. There's two on the left and two pointing to the left, two pointing to the right. It's like a VCR buttons. The fast to the left and fast to the right, kind of, sort of. That's what the chevrons are.
Here's a question. I finalized an agreement and subsequently discovered owner's name was incorrect. Do I have to purchase a new document in order to make the correction? So this is an important distinction I would like to make for all attendees. When you purchase a custom single document, you're creating as many drafts, unlimited drafts as you'd like, but you're purchasing the right to finalize the document once. So if there is a mistake in the final after a custom single document purchaser has made the final, do they have to purchase it again in order to?
Typically they would. In this case, if you would just give our office a call, we'll by all means credit a document to you. There's a better way of doing that in the future to see how a final will look. If you go to check variances as opposed to generate final, it'll give you a display of that document exactly as it would appear in the final. But again, this is something that we'll be more than happy to credit you for and give you a replacement document. By all means, please give us a call, let us know.
And I can show you real quick. So if you're a custom single document purchaser, and let's say you imported a Microsoft Word document into your project, and you want to see what's it going to look like before I generate that final. Because again, when you purchase one document at a time, you're purchasing the right to generate one final. That's it. So what you can do is to the right of the document in your project, I'm in the projects tab in an existing project, go to more actions and click check variances. Again, the variance checker is a cumulative summary of edits made to the standard template. It runs automatically when you generate a final, but you can choose to run it when the document is in draft format, and you can select clean or comparative, and you can select PDF. So it'll still have the draft watermark. It's not a valid final contract, but it kind of shows you a print preview of what that document will look like in a PDF. It's a locked PDF. Again, it has the draft watermark. There's not going to be any confusion about whether it's a final or not, but it gives you kind of a print preview. So this is good for those of you who are purchasing documents one at a time. If you have an unlimited subscription, you don't need to worry about this because you have unlimited finals through the year until you expire. If I go into a document and forget to select a team member, is there a simple way to add it without having to exit and start over? So they've created a document, they forgot to add a project team member. I mean, keep in mind that you can always, edit within the chevron. So let's pull a Microsoft Word document here. Let me do one-page view. So see, the project data and project team has automatically populated. Actually, everyone, this is what a chevron is. So the data between the chevrons is what you can feel free to manually enter. Just don't delete the chevrons itself. So if they have forgotten to add a team member, and I guess maybe the data, you forgot to add them, so this data is all blank, there was nothing here in this gray box except chevrons, you can actually click within the chevrons and add whatever you want. In fact, if you added the project team member and their address changed and you didn't change it in your contacts, you can actually go in the document and make any edits you'd like to the address. Just again, don't delete the chevrons, work within the chevrons. Oops. We get more questions. What is the best way to delete an article? Do we want to talk a little bit about article numbering and deleting articles? Because I have received a few inquiries regarding that.
When you start to delete articles, what's going to happen is when you generate a final, it's going to show up as a paragraph deleted. So, I mean, there's really no best practices how you want to delete an article, but just note that you're going to have the paragraphs deleted.
In terms of the numbering, do you recommend that they don't, if you delete the article number, it's not going to automatically reorder, correct? So it's best to keep, if you want to change the name of the article, that's fine, but is it best to keep the number?
I'd suggest to keep the numbering, but I mean, you could add additional numbers to it, or if you need to revise it, yeah, it would be best that you just add additional section numbers in the articles.
How do you get rid of the spacing of the unused chevron?
Okay. Actually, the chevrons do not occupy any space when you generate a final, but sometimes when you insert data in a chevron, a white space, if you notice, if you zoom in, that there's a white space before that, what you can do, you can hit the backspace button to get rid of that white space. But in general, the chevron does not occupy any space.
Is the dialog box that used to be on the desktop version that would guide you through all of the points considered an add-in, or is that a way to use that in Word? That was part of the add-ins toolbar. It was called the data dialog box. So here, you won't have it. I have it. I think I have the desktop saved here, but you won't have this add-ins. You won't have the data dialog. You will just use the review feature and track changes in Microsoft Word as you always do. You can go from one edit to the next. You can accept the change you're on or accept all changes in the document, or reject the change you're on or reject all changes in the document. Does it matter what version of Word you are using?
It generally doesn't matter what Word you're using. I know now that Microsoft Office 2007 is no longer supported. I mean, probably I would recommend 2010 and above, but 07 you might still be able to view because you're just reviewing the document. But I would stick to Microsoft Office. That's what we support.
Here's an important question. Is there a way to bypass the online editor when creating a custom template? ACD5 requires an offline custom template to be opened online. No, it does not. So let us really talk about this. Ariel?
Yeah, so you don't need to open up a custom template in order to, in the online editor in order to create one. What you can do, you can create a custom template based on your existing agreements that you already have, like the Word agreement. So just Hasti, if you could just show how, creating you can just upload it in the custom template area.
So here's a draft I opened in Microsoft Word in my project, and what I would do, I think, I would save it to my computer. I would delete all this project data if I wanted to import it as a custom template. I can finalize this for the project I created it for, but let's say I wanted, this template with all of these, these body edits that I made. If I wanted to save this, I would delete all the project data within the chevrons. I would save it to my computer. Then I would come to my ACD5 account. I would go to Template Library, Custom Template, and I would click Import Template. I would browse in my computer, find the custom template, click OK. It would be imported here, and you can see under type, it's a Microsoft Word icon. So it'd be imported here. Then when I'm in my projects, I can, create my project. Here it is. I click Create Document, and now I can either select a standard, a favorite, or I can go to Custom and open that custom template. And then the project data for the new project I've created will automatically populate for that new project. So you absolutely can create custom templates in Microsoft Word, save them onto your computer, import them into Template Library, Custom Template tab here, and then you'll be able to use them for future projects. When editing offline, can the Word file be emailed around to multiple editors? Sure. When you're working offline in Microsoft, it is a valid, absolute 110% Microsoft Word document. So you'll use it like you always use Microsoft. It is a Microsoft Word document. So you can send it as an attachment, have the person make edits and send it back to you. Then you'll use the track changes feature to accept or reject their edits. And you can send it to as many people as you'd like. If you purchase a single contract, can you create a custom template?
Yes,
Yes.
you can.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, that applies for agreements. You can create custom templates, but for forms, there's no custom templates.
So for forms, there aren't any custom templates. If they wanted to, so that let's say a custom single purchaser has finalized the document, they created it as a custom template, they will have to pay again if they want to finalize for another project, correct?
That is correct.
So yes, when you're a custom single purchaser, you have full use of ACD5. You're using it, you can create custom templates, add to your favorites, populate your contacts. Just the next time that you want to finalize, you're going to purchase the document within ACD5. And you can see always, with more actions to the right of a document, it'll say purchase. So you make your initial purchase on our website, but then after you made your first document purchase, you'll continue purchasing within ACD5. For me, it's grayed out because I have an unlimited annual subscription. So here's a question about, when doing heavy edits in B101 and C401s, if there is an issue with random spaces that's being inserted or a font, they don't show up in the document when it's in draft form, but then they'll show up in the final. You might be working in the online editor, but I'm going to punt this to Ariel and Will.
So when you're working on a document one, as we said earlier, it's best to know that we're working in an offline document and that document has been offline during the entire life cycle of this document. One thing that we look at and we can tell if the document has been introduced to the online editor is at the very bottom of a document. Oh, go to the document, Austin. At the very bottom of a document, you'll see either numeric characters or alphanumeric characters. The very bottom right of that document, that's the very bottom right.
Here?
Zoom in.
Oh, zoom in, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
The footer, yeah.
Oh, the footer. Okay. Oh, right there.
Okay. If this document has only been worked in the offline editor, has only been offline, it'll always be numeric. If this is touched in any way, it'll break the document. But typically, the formatting issues come in where a document has crossed over either the online editor at some point in time. But if it's an offline document and has remained an offline document the full time, your editing and formatting this document should be consistent with what you expect.
And just in addition, in case that you do have all numeric, and when you finalize it, you're still having like inconsistencies with the bolds and italic. Hasti, can you go to File?
Sure.
And go to Properties on the right-hand side.
Oh, right-hand side.
Top right, right there.
Oh, okay.
Click on that and go to Advanced Properties and go to Custom tab. Select the first field there under the name. Select that one. Can you expand that, please? So,
Oh, I can't seem to
that's fine.
pick the value.
The first value.
5.1.
Yeah, 5.1. Most often, this value here, the AIA creation version, if it's truly an edit offline document, it should have 5.1. Now, if it's missing, or if it says like any number different than 5.1, for 5.1, it's created within the within ACD5 edit offline. Now, if it's created on the desktop software, like will start with 4.12, 4.14. Those are fine. They will be recognized as an edit offline, and they shouldn't have formatting issues in the final. But if they have like 5.0, or if that field is missing here, the AIA creation version, that's when we start to see issues in the final document. So sometimes these get removed if you have a metadata scrubber. Some companies might have it when they email out the document. But if you do run into that problem, please contact our technical support, and we'll be glad to help you, re-add that metadata back into the document.
What about documents that seem to be AIA documents, however they cannot be finalized in ACD5?
That's kind of a tough one, because some documents are AIA, some documents are a mimic of an AIA document. So again, in those instances, more than likely the document would have to be introduced to someone here at tech support, and we could let you know kind of where we are with that. It's an open question, and there are too many variables to really answer dependently on that.
Right.
But we would be able to get you more information on it.
Here's a great question. This question is on opening the program. Every time I go to start it, I have to get a code. I'm always using the same computer. Why do I need to go get this code every time? I'll answer that, and then I'm going to throw it to Ariel and Will. So basically, I'll let them explain what that code is. It's a security measure. But the reason why you're using the same computer and every morning when you log in, it's making you enter that code again, is because I think in your settings, you have it set where every time you turn off your computer at the end of the day, your browser is to completely erase the history and the cookies. When you delete the cookies, even though you're using the same computer, when ACD5, when you log in, you've deleted the cookies, it doesn't realize that you had already logged in from this computer. So check your settings in your browser. Will, Ariel, do you want to talk a little bit about the security measures and the code when they first log in?
With the two-factor authentication, so it'll check if your previous browser. Now, if it sees any differences, maybe your time zone, your IP address, it goes to different variables, even the resolution on your computer. If that changes, then it'll trigger that, that you'll need to provide the security access code again. And this can happen since our browsers nowadays, like Google Chrome, Firefox, they're set to update your browser each time, and it's doing it behind the scenes. So it may be that, your browser got updated. So that's considered a change by our two-factor authentication. And that's why you have to go through it again, unfortunately.
One thing that I would suggest on this is really to make sure that you have a phone number set so that you can send it to your phone. That way you can get it quickly and log back in again. But again, this is a security measure for your protection only.
But, keep in mind, again, your default setting is having you erase the history automatically and cookies every time you turn off your computer for the day. That's why you're prompted for the code. I'm never, from now on, after the first time, I've never been prompted again. I'm going to continue on with a few tips on the online editor, and we're going to come back to additional questions. I know there's a lot, and we're trying to get through as much, but I just want to talk a little bit about the online editor. Again, you should use offline editing in Microsoft Word for your agreements. There are times like when you're doing a payment application or change order or G-Series form that you'll want to use the online editor. So again, really use the online editor for those forms. When you're using the online editor, make sure that you are saving and naming the document prior to making any edits. So real quick, I'm just going to go to AIA templates. When you open a document, if you click on the document name, it'll open in the online editor. The first thing you want to do after you click OK for the notices, here's the online editor, and we give you a notice here. Before you start editing, make sure you do your save and initial name. After you save it, the automatic save feature will automatically save your document every 5 minutes, but you want to go ahead and make sure you do File, Save As, select a project, select the name, or enter your own name or use the default, and click OK, and it'll save the document. Again, very important if you're using the online editor to make sure you save and name the document prior to making any edits. When you're using the online editor, save frequently to avoid being logged out. So right now, the log out is 20 minutes. We'll let customers know if we ever increase that time for the log out. But keep in mind, if you're typing in the online editor, it doesn't, if you're just typing and you haven't clicked save or you haven't clicked something in the toolbar, the ACD5 doesn't realize that you're actually actively working within it. It's not engaging the server. So even though you've been typing for 20 minutes, if you haven't hit save or some other button, ACD5 will give you a pop-up and say, you know, you're inactive, do you want to continue working? And you have to click yes or no. So again, it is just like online banking. It's a security measure we built in. We'll let customers know if we increase the time, but keep in mind that if you're just typing in the online editor, ACD5 doesn't think you're active. It thinks you're active when you've actually engaged the server. A great way to engage the server, which is really smart, is to save frequently. That way, if you have a little glitch in your Wi-Fi goes off for a second, you don't lose any any edits or anything like that. So just save frequently. It's an online editor. So if you do have an issue with the Wi-Fi or anything like that, you could lose edits. In the online editor, it's extremely important not to delete the chevrons. That's what the chevron looks like. You saw it in the Microsoft Word document. In the online editor, if you do delete the chevron, you have to call technical support. Then they have to work with the document individually. It's best not to delete them. Work within the chevrons to change project data and edit project data if you need to, or add project data. Don't delete them. Before we go back to answering more questions, a bonus tip. You know, I've done a lot of these trainings, and I see that there's a lot of customers that don't know that this exists, even though they've been using the product for 10 years with the desktop software as well. There is the ability to combine multiple PDFs into one final project manual. In your project, on the Projects tab, there's a project manual button. If you click on that button, it's going to show all of the PDFs that are in your project. So after you finalize the document, the PDF will be saved in your project. You can actually also import other unlocked PDFs that you want to add to your contract. Maybe you drafted a cover letter, or you want to add specs or other literature. You can import PDFs into your project. Then when you click Project Manual, all the PDFs in the project will appear, and you can check and reorder the order of the PDFs you selected, and then it'll be one nice file. You can email it easily, print it, and so forth. So that's the project manual feature. It is in your project. It allows you to combine multiple PDFs. That was the last bonus tip. So we're going to now go back to answering questions for the remainder, the next 6 minutes. Do we ever accept track changes on these documents after editing offline before we import? I think I can answer this. Yes, absolutely. You want that document to be completely final, that Microsoft document, your edits to be complete before you import. Really, the last and final step is to import and then click finalize. So yeah, you can absolutely work on that draft, email it to people, get their edits, accept it, reject it, work from your desktop. You know, this is a normal Microsoft Word document. So just like you always use Microsoft, you'll be accepting edits. The last step is to import it into ACD5, into your project. You'll click finalize. It'll generate either a clean or comparative final. It's a locked PDF. Once you generate the final, it's locked. No one can make changes to it. If you made a typo, go back to the original location of the Word document on your computer, fix the typo, re-import it, and then generate another final. If you're an unlimited subscriber, you have the option for unlimited finals. For custom single document, you're purchasing the right to finalize the document once. So that gets a little tricky. You want to make sure that it's final before you hit finalize if you're purchasing documents one at a time. I'm getting thank yous on the project manual tip. It's a good tip, and I've been doing this training for a long time, and a lot of people don't know it exists, and it's a good one. Let's see. Here's a question. Can initial blocks be added on each page before finalizing? Ariel.
So right now with the drafts, the initial blocks are not going to be there. It's only when you're finalizing, that finalized document would have the initial blocks. I believe that's usually on the left-hand side. But, we'll take that as a feature enhancement.
How can you tell when the AIA document you are working on is from a previous web-based system or the new ACD5 system? Just to clarify, the previous system was a desktop software. It wasn't web-based at all. ACD5 is the new cloud version, web-based version. Ariel, is there any way to tell if one, let's say, Word document was created in the desktop software
or versus
ACD5?
Yeah, we have ways of telling that, of knowing that information, but the main thing is to make sure that document is a valid AIA document. But yes, we do have ways of knowing.
Have tabs been added to the G series forms?
You can use tabs in the G series forms. However, you can't use tabbing in the online document. So what you'll need to do is you can just download that G document that you have, and then when you download it, you can apply the tabbing, and it's control tab. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, control tab. The regular just clicking tab won't work. You'll have to do a control tab, and that way it'll take your tabbing into that document. And so once you're done completely editing it, then you can import it back to finalize.
I can answer this one. Is there a way to eliminate the additions and deletions report from the final PDF? The only way to eliminate it is to choose a comparative version of the final. The comparative has your edits in line with the paragraph that you made them with no report. It is the variance checker. You have to pick one or the other, with the report or with edits in line with the text. I know it's confusing because it looks like a marked up final, and we want it to be very clean looking, right? Well, the AIA, we built it in purposefully, and we've done it like this forever because we want everyone who signs the final contract, their eyes to be directed to exactly what was added or deleted from the standard language. Some of these documents are very long, 40, 50 pages, so it could be hard to miss something that was added or deleted. So we try to make it very prominent. I think this looks like a follow-up, but can you set the tab distances?
Right now on the G form, since if you notice when you download it, it's a locked document, so you won't be able to use Word's tab settings. So right now it'll use whatever the default Word has, but we'll also consider that for enhancement.
When we want to have two signers to a contract, what's the best way to add another space for them when editing offline?
What you could do, if you can basically go into the signature area, you can copy that signature block and repurpose it.
This one?
Yeah. So you can just, what you can do is you can just copy that block and repurpose it like that, and then just put some spacing on it. But that is the way to do it.
Okay, everyone. Well, we have reached the 4 o'clock hour. Thank you so much for your excellent questions. Please direct any questions that we were not able to answer to technical support at 1-800-942-7732. We are experiencing a high volume currently. I would say lunchtime is the busiest time that we have.
Let's say for this line of questions that we received here today, let's just send these questions in separately.
Okay.
Separately, and we'll take care of this off.
So any questions that we didn't get to today, I'm going to send to Will, and his team will follow up with you directly. But for any future inquiries, as you receive them, as you need assistance, you can contact technical support. Again, lunchtimes tend to be our busiest times, just something to consider. You can also send any content questions to docinfo. That includes payment applications, G-Series, change orders. Docinfo can answer any content questions. Again, don't forget, March 8th, we have a webinar that's free for payment applications and change orders, completing them. You can find more information on our Learn page, and you can register for that March 8th course there, aiacontracts.org/learn. Again, thank you all for your excellent questions. We hope you found this helpful, and thank you for being a customer of AIA Contract Documents.